Hello and welcome to another Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. Today I shall be making over this number 42A Bedford evening news van that were built in 1957. This one was donated by Nick Tilling from Gosport in Hampshire, England. I'm going to get straight into this now. Just a quick look over and then I shall begin. Underneath you can just see evening news van and number 42 made in England by Lesney. As I said, this is a 42A, so it's one of the early versions. You can see at the back that there is a small tab holding the base on, so there's a rivet and a tab on this model. On the roof there should be a sign. The sign is missing. The sign should say "First with the news." It's quite large and stretches diagonally across the roof there. I'm going to have to make a new one of those. I've got to split this model in half to strip the paint off and repaint it. So I'm using a, 3.8mm drill, and I'm just taking off the rim of the edge of the post there so that I can remove the base cleanly. I'm going to re-tap this post later so I can fit a small screw in there to fit the base back on when I've finished. Using a flat bladed screwdriver as usual, I just prise the front of the base off and then that rear tab just falls out as easy as that. Now look at the size of that post there that was holding the sign on the roof. Not that one, the one that was in there, that one. No wonder the sign snapped rather than the post. These are the small M2 screws that I'm going to be using to put the base back on. But before I can do that, I've got to drill a hole in here that I can thread to accept the screw. Now I don't want to go too deep. It's very easy to get carried away with these little drills. They can run around for ages and ages doing nothing, and all of a sudden they'll bite and sink straight into this soft metal. So I take things easy these days, and as an aid I mark the depth using a small piece of masking tape like that, and that way I don't run the risk of punching all the way through and out of the front of the model. Now I'm using these wooden vice clamps that I made from lolly sticks and a scrap bit of wood, and I haven't done the vice up particularly tight because this kind of body can be squeezed in, and if it gets squeezed in the base may not fit back on as easily as you would like. So I'm using a pointy tap to begin with, and I'm also going to use a flat-ended one so that I can cut a screw thread all the way to the base of the hole that I've drilled. Here's a close-up of that screw fitted into the newly threaded hole, and as you can see it fits quite well. Now before I can paint this base I like to take the wheels off and give them a clean separately. To do that I have to remove this tiny little burr on the end of the axle here. To do that I use my Dremel and a cylindrical grindstone. Now I've kind of mastered this technique over the last few months, and I use my little finger here to support the axle, and I let gravity help me by holding the wheel away from the grindstone. Then I just touch it lightly with the end of the grindstone and grind that burr off. And as you can see the axle spins on its own accord and the burr is worn off evenly all around. And it's as simple as that. Sometimes I have damaged the tyres, but more often than not I get away with it. Now it's time to match the paint. Before I strip the model I have to make up some paint to paint it with, and I use the original model as a guide to making a matching paint. So I'm using two Mr. Hobby water-based acrylics here. One is this yellow, number 329, and the other is the red 327. They are both gloss paints. Now I'm a little bit disappointed here because I haven't got much yellow. I always like to make up more paint than I need because invariably I have to touch the model up in the final stages. Now that paint straight out of the pot is not a bad match, although I do think that it warrants one drop of red to try to give it a slight orange tinge to make it match exactly. This is debatable. You will see in the finished model that although I did my best to match the paint, and at the time it looked exact, the finished product turns out slightly darker to my mind. Let me know what you think. So after I've matched the colour, I add some thinners, and then I add just a splash of this Mr. Colour levelling thinner, which is a product that I've been experimenting with. Now that's silly, I just put 2 drops in. It needs a little bit more than that to be effective. What it does is it retards the drying of the paint and gives it extra time to level out, and you end up with a shinier finish. So now I'm not ready to paint just yet. I'm just sealing this pot with some masking tape or packaging tape, and I'll set it aside for when I need it, probably tomorrow the way things are going. So using my favourite product, poly stripper paint stripper, I'm going to attempt to remove the paint. I always use these disposable food containers, and I hold them with forceps. Here you can see that the forceps on the left are cheap imitation ones from wish.com, and they have actually bent before they have gripped the model. So they go straight into the bin. Now I'm using these stainless steel ones, which are extremely durable and very, very strong. The yellow paint was putting up quite a bit of resistance to my paint stripper, so I gave it a second coat and I put it in this IKEA sandwich bag in the hope that the fumes will assist with the removal of the paint. So after about half an hour, I get the parts into the ensuite and remove the paint using this pink toothbrush and some warm water. It gets a little bit messy, so I have to be sure I clean up after myself. Don't want to get into trouble from Julie. So that's the base done. Now to reveal the body. Let's see how this went. Interestingly enough, the body, somewhat interestingly, the paint stripper did not affect in any way the IKEA sandwich bag, so they're obviously made to last. Right, this paint is coming off a lot better than it did before, although not completely. As you can see here, there are a few little scraps of paint left. This is not uncommon, as I have found that these Matchbox paints are quite durable and have stood the test of time. So using my dental picks, I remove all these last little scraps of paint. If you haven't got any dental picks, I must encourage you to get some, as I find them an invaluable aid to this type of hobby. Now I put the base back in at this stage because I felt that this side had sustained some damage during its lifetime. There's a few little dents and imperfections there, and again, using a dental tool, I'm supporting it with my finger and thumb to lever out the dents on the lower edge of the body there. I won't admit that it's perfect, but it's better than what it was. At least I've done something to address it. Something is better than nothing, I guess you could say. Now I've reached the stage where I use this bronze wool to scour the model all over to make it ready to receive the undercoat. At this stage it's great to start to admire the details that are cast into the model, but they won't show their true form until I've coated it with an undercoat, as you will see in a minute. Here I'm cleaning as I go, because these metal filings and steel wool, bronze wool scraps get everywhere in the carpet. There's just a very small rough edges here. There's just a few rough edges here on the lower edge of the body, so I'm just using a small metal file, flat file, to run over the edges and just smarten them up a little bit. Lovely. Okay, these are ready for the undercoat. So in the paint booth I go, and I'm using the Tamia fine grey primer again. Do the inside as well as the outside because people can see through. There's no glass in this model or plastic to represent the windscreen. So people can look in there, and you want it to look nice on the inside as well as the out. That's why it's worth taking the extra care just to undercoat the interior. And also there I've done the base. The base is going to be black, by the way. I made some measurements and drew out some rough diagrams of the sizes of the decals that I have to make for this model. Now, using Photoshop and some images that I sourced online, I used the online images as basically a template, and I built new stickers over the top of them. Unfortunately, not all of the decals were printed out in high definition. For some reason the printer was playing up, and a lot of these I had to throw away. Very difficult to match the fonts, and it is a lot of stuffing around. Took a couple of hours to do these, but I'm quite happy with the results. Now, I've printed some of them out on white backed decal paper and some of them on clear backed decal paper. I have to give these now a coat of this Tamia clear, and actually give it 2 coats. So here's the first, and when it's dry I give it a second. Whilst they're drying, I thought I'd have a little bit of time out and go and watch some telly.
I heard about that.
Koala will eventually
Kill you. Marty!
Okay, we have a news bulletin just in. We currently have live coverage of a police pursuit in progress. This started about 10 minutes ago apparently, when a boy dressed as a bear, go figure, stole a car from outside of 7-Eleven. Tally Heli is on the scene live. You can see the footage there. Oh wow, he's just ran a red light. This is crazy. Someone's going to get killed if he's not stopped soon. Come on. Well, you can do it, guys. Oh, yes. Outstanding work there by our boys in blue. Finally bringing this guy to justice there. What's that? I hear they're taking him in custody. So we'll have more information on this exciting news at 5. There's never much on the television, so I can't sit around all day. I'm going back into the room to do some more modelling. What I'm doing here is just admiring all the details. Here on the body you can see a fuel cap, grills, headlights, indicators, attachment points on the roof there. On the rear we have windows on the rear doors, hinges and a handle. Now, as I'm looking at this model, I see there are some imperfections, one of which that's niggling me is this little dent in the right hand side. So I'm going to fill it up with some modelling putty, sand it down and respray this with some more undercoat. I'm using the Humbrol modelling putty, just putting a very small amount on there, and it dries really quickly. After it's dry I will sand it down with some very fine emery paper. Don't know what that means, T417, but I thought I'd show it to you anyway. This is some scraps that I've got left over. I bought this years ago and I'm still using it because I use such small amounts each time. There I'm showing you how I've folded it into like a capital T so that I've got a flat surface with which to sand. Now I've got to replace that banner on the roof. So I had a second model that I took some measurements from, and using SketchUp I designed a very similar looking banner as accurately as I could to the original, and I printed it out on my 3D printer. I actually did more than one because sometimes they fail and it's good to have a few spares up your sleeve. Now here is the first time I'm testing it out onto the roof of the model. It's a little bit like a seesaw, there's a bit of rocking in it. So I have to modify the profile slightly with some sanding. But overall I'm very pleased with it. I had to enlarge the hole in the middle there with a small rat tail file. Because of the method of printing with my printer, one side was smooth one side of the sign was smooth, the other side had a cross-hatched kind of finish on it. So I removed that finish by lightly sanding it on a flat surface. After sanding down the little dent in the right hand side, I wasn't fully happy with the result, and I knew that it would show up on the carousel shot at the end. So I actually had to do it again. So each time getting slightly better and using less filler as I went. Now I'm going to glue this sign on the roof, so I removed some of the primer there, because when you're gluing something to this, you want to glue it to the metal and not to the paint. Now the guys from STARBOND in Los Angeles have come up trumps again. They sent me some more goodies in the mail. This one is a gap filler. They specialise in super glues of different thicknesses. This one is a thick gap filling one, and it comes with this accessory pack of nozzles, which are really handy, especially when you're doing intricate work like this. It allows you to place the product exactly where it's needed and nowhere else. Now this is quite gluggy, this stuff, and it's a bit of effort to squeeze the container, I must admit, but eventually I get it to dribble out, and as you can see it's very syrupy. And the beauty of this particular product is most super glue dries instantly, but this one dries in a couple of minutes, so it gives you heaps of time to position the part and ensure it's in the correct orientation before it goes off. The glue, that is. Now why in the real world you would have an angled sign like that on the roof, I don't know. Surely it would be right down the middle, fore and aft. Anyway, thank you STARBOND for sending me this stuff. It seems like it's done the job. For the base, I had to nip down to the $2 shop and buy some more of this Australian export satin black. It's my favourite product for the bases. I ran out the other week and I had some catastrophic results in my last makeover where the substitute paint I used melted some plastic parts. Here we go, about 5 minutes after gluing this on, you're ready to handle it. You can even sand the edges here, and this sign is showing no signs of coming off or loosening up whatsoever. I've smeared a very small amount of putty along the edge there where it joins the roof, and I'm just sanding away as gently as I can to try and get a perfect join. I've also done the dent on the side for the third time. Again, whilst I'm waiting for the filler to dry, I take the opportunity to wash these wheels in some warm soapy water with a paintbrush there, and I get all the grime out of that groove around the axle. These axles were rusty. I've cleaned them up using a bit of emery paper and some metal polish. So now I've got the base and the wheels and the axles, and I'm going out to my shed so I can put them back together using my drill press. Now my wife Julie, she's been doing some furniture restoration and she took all my clamps off me, so I've had to go and find them again, and now I'm putting this thing back onto my drill press and clamping it down firmly, making sure it's aligned. Now I'm checking the wheels and making sure the best side faces out. It's always a little cheat of mine. I mean, the inside never gets seen, so it can be as grotty as anything and you can get away with it. I always have the best side facing out. Now that one worked really well and really quickly. I just need to brush off those metal filings and it will look sweet. Same with the other one. Back inside now, and I've re-undercoated the body. To my delight, the undercoat has assisted in filling in that very slight gap beneath the sign where it joins the roof. I used my battery powered paint mixer to blend the paint that I mixed yesterday and make it all fluid again and even. Tip it into my spray gun, the cup on the spray gun there, and I'm not very happy because I don't actually have as much as I normally have. I like to have plenty up my sleeve in case I have to redo it, but I have barely enough to get the job done today. I must put some more yellow paint on my shopping list. So I give the model a couple of coats. It looks a little bit rough at this magnification, but I'm hoping that that leveling medium that I added is going to make this dry beautifully smooth and glossy. So time will tell. Now I'm going to select some decals for the model. As I said, not all of them worked out. Here's an example. If you can see the lower two signs on this pad here, I've got a bleed of red ink across the center, so they're going straight in the bin. But these two here are near as perfect as you can get, so I should be using those. On here there's a few failures. That one's no good, that one's no good, that one's no good. So, and one of these is no good, which is a pretty good average. So I've got heaps of some and not so many of the others. Now, using this original model as a guide, you can see there's a little cutout there on the sticker to accommodate the domed head of the attachment pin. So I'm going to use a 4mm punch to cut out half a circle there on the bottom. I'm just marking it so that I know roughly where I've got to go. I give it one strike with the hammer, and there's the hole. I think that hole might be a little bit too big, so I go down the size with the punches and cut another one out. That's a bit better. I can live with that. I think that's going to look good on there. Well, not there, but on the one I'm doing up. It's always good to have a model to take reference from. I'm lucky that I have usually more than one model of each kind. Due to the ever-enduring generosity of my subscribers, they keep sending me stuff and I just can't pump these videos out quick enough, unfortunately. I do try my best. So it's exciting time now to put the homemade decals on. So I wet them first, and then I always slide the decal off the backing paper slightly with my thumb, and then I just drag the backing paper out and pray and hope that the decal sits nicely on the model. Okay, that's 1 out of 6. So I keep going. Now these two on the side, as you can see, I've cut the ends on an angle, so the ones on the other side are on the opposite angles. These are the ones I printed on clear decal paper. You can see when you pull the white backing paper off, you can't see anything else because it's clear. These ones here are printed on white backed decal paper. I do like these stickers, they are so cute. These are one of the smallest stickers I've ever put on a Matchbox model, I think. I'm really pleased how this model's coming on. As you can see here, I've actually painted the front end also with some silver ink from an ink pen. I have experimented with the chrome pens, but I find they are too bright and look non-original. That's why I've gone back to the rather dull silver ink pens. Now it's a simple case of fitting the base on, and one screw later and the model is miraculously finished. So here's a reminder of what we started with. Again, this model was donated by Nick Tilling. Thanks again, Nick. This video would not have been created without your contribution. And this is what it looks like now. I must admit, the leveling fluid in the paint seemed to have done its job. The paint finish looks beautiful, and those homemade stickers are some of the best that I've ever made, and I'm very, very pleased with the results, especially also the silver grille and headlights. I'm happy with that. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you again next week. Goodbye.